This book is, I think, 100 something pages, 200 max, and it felt like it was like 400 pages for me. It took me so long to read this book and to finish reading this book because I was just bored. At the beginning of the year, I set myself to read 100 books throughout the year, and I have a confession to make. According to Goodreads, by the time I'm filming this intro, 10 books behind schedule. So in this reading vlog, we are going to be catching up to the reading goal, and until we catch up to the reading goal, this vlog won't be ending. So this vlog might take me 1 week, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe the whole year to do. Maybe it'll be 10 minutes long, maybe it'll be 15 hours long, but we are going to see. We are going to be catching up on the reading goal. I have to admit that it has been a very long time since I filmed the intro for this vlog, and it's been such a long time that along the way I went from being 10 books behind schedule to being 12 books behind schedule, and right now I'm 11 books behind schedule because after many days and many books started, I finally finished one book. But before I start telling you about the book that I finally managed to finish and all the books I'm in the middle of, let's start by talking about the books I have been reading and I was in the middle. Because one of the reasons why it has taken me so long to finish reading one book is because I have been starting a lot of books and not finishing. It's kind of like my reading slump, a signal that I'm on a reading slump, because my personal brand of reading slumps is not that I'm completely not reading it, it's that I'm just starting a lot of books and never finishing them. And in this case, it doesn't help that I also DNF'd one book. So the book that I DNF'd was called Boss in the Patches by Kate Canterbury, and you might be listening, hearing this name, and you might be thinking, Carol, this doesn't necessarily sound like a book you would enjoy. But the thing about this book is that when I hate this name, because I feel like this name gives a very different idea of what this book is about, as well as the cover for the book in the Kindle Unlimited cover for this book. This book is way more, it's a romance, but it's way more of an emotional romance than a very explicit romance. At least until the part that I got. The beginning of the book is really strong because these characters, they have such a chemistry and also there's such a tension. It's also really interesting, the dynamic between the characters. But then we meet the male main character's family, and in my opinion that's when the book kind of goes off rails and just loses itself. I didn't like everything that happened after we meet his parents. The plot starts moving way too fast, the relationship starts moving way too fast. These characters, they know each other for 2 days and they're already like, but I know you, and they are already kind of like, for having known each other for 2 days, they're already living together. Like the plot goes completely off rails. And after this much intense spicy scene in this book, the first spicy scene, there's probably more, but everything completely flips. It feels so weirdly placed, so weirdly written. The characters, they no longer feel like themselves. I honestly didn't read it. I read the first few paragraphs and I was like, oh, I'm not reading this, I'm not liking this. And then I just started skipping the pages and reading some sentences, just to be sure where I was in the book. And then after the spy scene ended, I tried to read it again, and at this moment I was like 60% through reading the book, and I was like, I can do this. I'm not the biggest fan of DNFing, especially if I'm already like 6% through the book. I'm the kind of person that let's just read it, let's do some quick reading and finish this book, but I just couldn't do it. I just didn't have in me to finish reading that book, because even though the beginning of the story was really strong, after we meet his family, everything derails, and I really didn't like it, so I ended up DNFing Boss in the Patches. And in this moment in time, I was in the middle of like 5 different books. I'm currently reading Ready Player One, which I plan on putting it in another vlog. I'm also 60% reading that book, still haven't finished it. I started reading OK Days by Jenny Mustard. I'm 10% reading that book. But I was also in the middle of reading the first book in the Harry Potter series because I never read the Harry Potter series, even though it's a book that was really popular in my childhood. I also never really fully watched the movies. Over the years, I remember watching little parts of the movies. I think I might have watched the first movie when it initially came out in the movie theaters because I do have a memory of watching it in the theaters with my cousin who is a big Potterhead. But I was like, what? I was really little, maybe 5 years old when that movie came out, so I don't really remember, but I do remember snippets, and throughout the years, I remember watching parts of movies, so I remember snippets of the movies. I know what will happen in the story because I know I'm fully spoiled for the series. I remember the only movie I watched in full besides the first movie in the series, the only movie, the Harry Potter series that I watched in full was the one with Robert Pattinson. I watched that movie one day a few years ago because it was just on TV and I ended up watching it from beginning to end. And that's kind of my interaction with the Harry Potter universe. I have never read the books, but I was always curious about it, especially in the past couple of years because it's just such a popular series and I've been getting really into fantasy and like I needed to read the Harry Potter book. I also know my Harry Potter, my Hogwarts house. I'm a Ravenclaw because there was that moment in time where it was really popular on Instagram for people to keep posting like their Harry Potter house. So I took the test even though I never read or watched the Harry Potter movies. And I'm a Ravenclaw, and then I didn't know what a Ravenclaw was, so I read the description of what it is to be a Ravenclaw, and I do agree with the Sorting Hat. I do believe I'm a Ravenclaw. But yes, I picked up Harry Potter, the first book, which is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Harry Potter the Philosopher's Stones, depending on in which country you are. And it was on Kindle Unlimited, so I borrowed it, I read it, and I understand the hype. It is a middle grade, it is for kids, and for the time, I think it was the perfect book to read because I'm in the reading slump. I wasn't really finishing books, so Harry Potter was a fast read. It was not very heavy, it was quite lighthearted. So I liked reading Harry Potter. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then the first book I know is on Kindle Unlimited in English, and then for the second book, not going to lie, it would be an adventure to read the second book because the second book isn't in English on Kindle Unlimited. The book I went to try and look at my library, the ebook isn't available at my library. If I went to the library, most definitely they would have a physical copy, but at least when it comes to the ebook, they don't have the ebook available in my local library. But at least where I live, the translation to Italian, to French, Spanish, and German are available on Kindle Unlimited. So I decided to pick the Italian version because I need to work out the Italian muscle, and that might be a good idea. I thought about also picking the French edition. I heard that the French translation might not be the best, so if you read Harry Potter in French, please let me know if it is worth trying to read the third book in French, because I plan on continue reading the series, but also if the books are on Kindle Unlimited in languages that I understand, so I will continue reading the books on Kindle Unlimited in the language that I understand. But yes, the first book that I finished reading was Harry Potter, but this means that I'm currently 11 books behind schedule, which is one book more than from when I started this vlog. And then after I finished reading Harry Potter, I started reading OK Days by Jenny Mustard because it was on a recent TBR. It was on my monthly TBR on the time that I'm filming this clip. And OK Days apparently follows this young couple. We follow Sam, who is a Swedish woman in her late 20s, and she's currently spending a summer in London because she's doing an internship. And then we have Lucas, who is this man who I think he's British. He lives in England and they kind of meet. They have this relationship and basically they are navigating being their late 20s, figuring out life, but also being this relationship that has an end date because Sam will probably be going back to live to Stockholm and live in London, and it's basically a relationship with an end date. And I got to 10% reading the book, and I'm really enjoying it. But by the time I'm filming this clip, today was the release date for Phoebe Berman's Is Gonna Lose It by Brooke Averick. I think it's the name of the author, right? Yes, Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It by Brooke Averick. I pre-ordered this book because I saw the synopsis for this book on Goodreads and I was really curious about it because this book follows a non-traditional main character for a romance novel. So it's been multiple days and I also finished reading multiple books. More specifically, I finished reading a total of 5 books or 5 works of literature that could have been logged in on Goodreads as books. So let's start by talking about my pre-order. Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It by Brooke Averick. How to talk about this book. I absolutely love this book. Absolutely love it. It was a 5 stars and I had this 5 stars feeling from the beginning of the book, and 5 stars feeling was very consistent until the end of the book. I just absolutely love it. I thought it was funny. I like the characters. I like the story. I'm going to try to keep these reviews brief because otherwise we're going to be in this video for quite some time. This video will be a movie. So I love Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It. Amazing book. Highly recommend, especially if you like classic rom-com, you want to read a book that has those feelings, gives the same feelings, same vibes as a classic 2000s rom-com. Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It is a great option because I personally had very high early 2000s classic rom-com vibes. Now moving on to the next book that I read. I say book like this because it's actually short story. So I read Mr. Celery by Sally Rooney. This is a very short story. It's around 30 pages where we follow this young woman. She's in her early 20s. She's dealing with a lot of grief. Her father is sick, and also there is this older man in his late 30s that she's very close to, and I'm going to leave it at that. Absolutely love this book. Wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much. I was expecting to like it because I like Sally Rooney's writing style, and every single other book by Sally Rooney I really enjoyed it, and Beautiful World Where Are You is one of my favorite books ever. But I wasn't expecting to enjoy Mr. Celery so much. This is the kind of book where I finished reading this book. I didn't notice I had already managed to finish the book because I didn't notice time passing because I was just so into the story that I didn't realize I had already finished the book until it was like, you finished the book. But it's just this perfect short story where at the same time I want to read more. I want a full-length novel about these characters, but also understand why this is a short story, and I think it's perfect that it is a short story, because maybe if it was a little bit longer I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, but it's just that perfect combination of I wish this was a full-length novel, at the same time the story feels like it was perfect for the length that it was. It just left me wanting more, and I think it was just so perfect. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but honestly, when I'm talking like this, I feel like I should have given it a 5 stars. The next book I finished reading was also a short story. It was Randomized by Andy Weir, and I think this is one of the books from those short story collections from Amazon. When it comes to Randomized, I really like Andy Weir's writing style, but the story was very okay. I don't care about it. The characters were all very unlikable, didn't really like the characters. The story was okay. I didn't really understand why he was telling us this story because it was just okay. And yes, it's there. In a few months I'll probably completely forget that I read this book, but I'm not bothered that I read it because it was so short. It was also around 30 pages long, but also not going to think about it in a few months. Another short story that I read was O Agente do Correio by Alexander Pushkin. I think in English it might translate something like the postal agent, the post agent. I don't know because I was looking on Goodreads to see if there was any translation for this short story because it is a very short 30 pages short story as well. And if there is a translation for this book, I think it might be a translation that might be on some sort of short story compilation by the author, because in terms of just the single, a standalone short story, it doesn't seem to be available. But I read the Portuguese translation, and this is your classic Russian classic story where it is sad, it is tragic, it makes you feel multiple feelings, but overall it's very tragic and sad. Ended up giving it 3 stars because don't get it was meh. It definitely wasn't the Russian short story. The Russian story I felt the most depressed after reading it, because every single Russian classic that I ever read were all very sad. But also it wasn't the most sad, but it also wasn't happy, and it was okay. And then the final book I finished reading was finally, after 10 years on my TBR, I finished reading Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I believe this book will be in another video. I'm not sure if it will be already out before this video or after. But when it comes to Ready Player One, I really enjoyed the book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. That being said, I was kind of mad with myself because the Carol that initially added this book to her TBR would have absolutely loved this book and given it 5 stars, but Carol from 2026 really enjoyed it, but it is not her favorite book. Also, I feel maybe that is because I put so much pressure that this book was going to be a 5 star, that the expectations were so high that it was impossible for this book to meet. And in terms of the books that I'm currently reading, I started a new book. And I'm not sure if it was the best idea I had or if it was the worst idea I had when it comes to this starting to catch up with my reading vlog, because I started reading Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maher, and in one hand, this is a great book to read throughout trying to catch up with this reading challenge, because the first book in the series, I absolutely loved it. I binge read it. I read it in one day, and I completely lost track of time while reading Assistant to the Villain, and I'm currently 116 pages into reading the book. I'm absolutely loving this book. I completely lost track of time while reading this book. I didn't notice I read over 100 pages of this book until I looked down and was like, wow, there are already 3 numbers on my page, because I didn't even notice that I read 116 pages, and so far I'm having a lot of fun with this book. I just really enjoyed this series. But also it's gonna be a very not great idea because I'm trying to catch up with my reading goal. And this book is over 500 pages long. It's a very long book. Also, I do lose track of time while reading this book, so maybe it might not be great for my sleeping schedule or for doing everything that isn't reading the book, because when I start reading books, I completely lose track of time. So maybe it was a great idea, maybe it was not a very great idea, but I just know that I'm having a lot of fun reading this book. And so far, when it comes to where we stand at the reading goal, we are 8 books behind this track, because we had so much time that has gone through between my last update and this update that we still have 8 books. There are still 8 books behind schedule. So we are going to try and speed up things a little bit, otherwise we are going to spend the rest of the year doing this video trying to catch up with my reading goal. Hi, hello, so it's been multiple days. If you are noticing that the background it's different, it's because I actually reorganized my bookshelf, but I'm here to give you an update on trying to catch up with my reading goal, and it's not going great. So I finished reading Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maher. I absolutely love this book. I love just how funny and how this book there's an amazing slow burn romance, such a great slow burn motion. I love that this book has a plot and you're following this plot, which at the same time you have very high stakes. Very, very high stakes in this plot, but also because of the tone of the book, it just feels so silly, goofy, and so funny, and I just have so much fun reading this book. I love the characters, I love the dynamic, I love the story, and I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars because the first book I ended up giving it 5 stars, but this one, while I really loved reading it, it just didn't keep me as hooked as the other book. Assistant to the Villain, I read in one day, I think a little bit over a 24-hour period. I needed to stop because I needed to sleep, so that was the only reason why I stopped reading Assistant to the Villain. Apprentice to the Villain, on the other hand, I took a little bit more time to read. It didn't keep me as hooked, but I think, I'm not sure if it is because of the book, or if it is me and of the place in my life that I am right now. And when I picked this book up, that it took me just like 2 days to finish reading this book. Really loved Apprentice to the Villain. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really want to read the sequel. And then I also finished reading another book which was called On the Flip Side. This is a self-help that was very obviously written by a white American man in 2007, and you can do with that information what you want to do with that information, but it was fine. A lot of things felt like, yeah, that's kind of like common sense. Does some people need to read this, some of the things that this author is saying on this book? Yes, because some people do lack the common sense, but most of it was literally common sense and very obviously written by a white cis hetero man in 2007, from some of the tips to the things he's saying to even like the data he's using, very obviously written by in 2007. So it was fine. I understand why this isn't a really popular self-help book. It also reminded me why I'm not the biggest self-help reader, and it's okay. And then ever since then, I haven't finished any other book. I started reading, I'm not sure if I talked about it in the previous clip, but I tried reading All Gay Days by Jenny Mustard. I ended up DNFing that book around like 30 to 40% mark because it's a soft DNF. For now, I'm not continuing reading that book, because it was advertised for fans of Sally Rooney, and then I read a Sally Rooney, and it quickly reminded me why this book isn't anything like Sally Rooney, especially because of the writing style. In OK Days, it's a fine book, but I found the characters to be dull and boring, and I was so bored reading it. And I also didn't like the writing style. It was very pa. The sentences, it was like they were very, how to say it in English? The word is escaping my mind. It felt like the sentences they had around the same length. The writing wasn't flowing for me, so I was like, you know what? We are soft and having this book because I was just so bored. I tried reading Only Alive on Sundays, which is a novella, a very short novella that I found out through Pinterest, and it was advertised to change your life. It will change your life, and not loving that either, so it's also a soft DNF. Maybe I will come back to reading it soon because it's such a short novella, but I'm not loving the writing style. It's very flowery, but it is this kind of flowery that I don't enjoy reading it. It's very like spiritual because the name of the titles is the name of tarot cards, and also is like some called the ether. There are these spiritual things going on, and it's just not the kind of book I enjoy. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting, so I was also very bored, and that felt so obvious for me because I picked Only Alive on Sundays, and this book, it's 100 and something pages, maybe 200 pages. It's quite a short book. It's a novella, and the Kindle said it would take me around 3 hours to finish reading the book. And then I picked up another book that is like double the size, and it said, oh, you will take like 5 hours to finish this book. And for me, it's one of those moments that made me realize that I really wasn't enjoying that book, because it would take me so much longer to read a book that was half the size as the other book. But also I picked up another book, and I was already hooked, while in the other book I was like, So it's not a reading slump, it was just a book that wasn't working for me. And right now I'm currently reading The Co-op by Tara DeWitt. I'm currently 81% through reading this book. This is a second chance, enemies to lovers, forced proximity, Marriage of Convenience romance novel. I'm really enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun. I don't particularly like the characters. They kind of annoy me a bit. But you know, I'm having fun. And that's it for the book. That's my review for the co-op so far. I'm having fun. I don't particularly love the story. I don't particularly love the characters. But it's just a book that I have fun. And then when I'm reading it, I'm like, cool. My brain likes this. And that's it for like books so far. But I just logged into Goodreads and I'm still 8 books behind schedule. And I don't know if I will be able to go back in schedule in a timely manner, especially if I'm just reading like books, no? Long or average sized books. So I'm making the decision that, I'm going to catch up to this reading goal, no matter what it takes. I'm going to read many novellas. Hi, so I finished reading some more books, I think 3 more books actually. So let's talk about them, because if you are just a mild spoiler, we are not making great progress on catching up with the reading goal, but I finished reading 3 more books. So let's talk about them. I finished reading The Co-op by TBR Takedown, and my opinion stayed the same. It was a fine romance novel. It's not a book I will be thinking about, but also not mad that I read it. It's just like fine. Then I finished reading Stage by Augusto Mano. This is a short story, one of those Amazon original short stories that is a murder mystery. And short story gave me mixed opinions because the beginning of the story was very promising, the middle was very generic, and the ending, it was very convenient and just very stereotypical at points in short story. It was like it didn't really know what was going on. It didn't really know what it wanted to be, if it wanted to be a murder mystery, just a thriller or a romance. And there was a point in this short story as well where I thought this was a murder mystery short story, because that's what this series of Amazon original short stories are about. They are in general mystery short stories. And I went into this book thinking to be a mystery short story, but at the beginning of the book, for a moment there, I thought like, is this actually a romance? But no, it is indeed a mystery short story. It just felt like this short story didn't really know what it wanted to be. And then the most recent book I finished reading was The Ministry of Time by Gallienne Bradley. This was one of the books it was on my yearly TBR. It was on the TBR of 26 books I want to read in 2026. I finished reading it. It was also a book I was highly anticipating reading it because I had a feeling I was really going to enjoy it. And at the same time, I really enjoyed The Ministry of Time. I also am mildly disappointed by it because I thought it was going to be a 5-star. It definitely wasn't a 5-star. I really enjoyed the first half of the book, but the second half, it lost me a little bit, and the ending, I felt like I didn't like the pacing for the end of the book or the end in general, and also at moments right at the ending it felt a little bit confusing. And in some ways it's meant to be a little bit confusing because of the situation, but it just felt a little bit too confusing considering what this book was. But considering this is a debut novel, I think it's a really great debut novel, and I do want to read other things by the author, and overall I really enjoyed The Ministry of Time. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I don't think, did I give the ratings for the other books? I think for the co-op I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. For Stage I ended up giving it 2 stars, and The Ministry of Time I ended up giving it 4 stars. So let's move on. Right now I'm reading Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinman. I'm reading the KU book, so the cover is not the cover that is on the physical book. But I read exactly 1 chapter last night and then I fell asleep. And I also had really high expectations for Dungeon Crawler Carl because I heard mixed opinions about this book. I heard a lot of people saying that this is a wonderful book, but also I heard a lot of people criticizing this book for the way it describes some of the characters in the dungeons that even though it is meant to be kind of like grotesque, just some of the word choices I heard some people saying they don't like. So we are here to do another update for trying to get back on track with my reading goal, which it's going great, guys. It's going great. I'm being super successful in this mission, but I have a few updates to give it to you. Not many. Honestly, I have no idea how many books behind I am at this point because I'm now looking at it. I'm dreading looking at how many books I am behind at the moment. But I have a few updates for you. So I ended up DNFing Dungeon Crawler Cow and DNF'd at the 42%. I just couldn't do it. I do understand why people love this book, but it was just not a book for me. I reached 40% and then I saw how many pages I had left in the book. I was like, I can't do it. Sorry, I can't waste any more time on this book because I was not enjoying it. Not because it was bad, it's just not the book for me. And then I read a short story called The Reunion Dinner by Jessie Q. Sutanto. And okay, so let's talk about it. At the beginning of this short story, I was sure it was going to be another 2 stars because it was feeling quite... This short story was feeling quite lost. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And then we get to the end of the short story and there is a plot twist. And I love the plot twist. Such a crazy plot twist. So I ended up giving The Reunion Dinner 4 stars because it started kind of like feeling lost. And then we have something that happens. We have the murder because it is a murder mystery. I think I forgot to say it, but The Reunion Dinner is a short story and it is a murder mystery. So it starts feeling quite lost, and then in the middle we have the murder and things starts getting crazy, and then there is the plot twist. There are some revelations about the characters, and if you like soap operas, give The Reunion Dinner a try because it's very short. It's I think 30 pages. It will take you around a half hour to read this short story, and it feels like a soap opera. And the plot twist, love the plot twist. I ended up giving The Reunion Dinner 4 stars but I started reading The Wolf of Winnipeg and Me for the millionth time. I'm not going to tell you how many times I have read this book. It's one of the many reasons why my Goodreads is private because I have this list of books that whenever I'm feeling in a rut or I need a pick-me-up or I'm sad or a comfort book, I have this list of books that I have read an amount of time that might be concerning to some people. The Wolf of Winnipeg is one of them, and I started rereading it a few days ago. This is quite a long book, but because I have already read it, if I want to, I can fight through it. I'm currently on chapter 22. I'm loving this book, which is no surprise because while I don't think this book is perfect at all, and it is a millionth reread, I'm finding even more little things from the text to the story that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan or I think could be improved. This book it's one of those books that does something to my brain and my brain really enjoys it. Hi. So we are here for not necessarily the final, but we are almost on the final update for this reading vlog for trying to finally manage to be up to date with my reading goal because according to Goodreads you only have 1 book left. We are only 1 book behind schedule. So before we go and start reading the final book for this reading vlog, let's talk about all the other books I read in the meantime. I believe in the last update I talked about The Reunion Dinner, so we are going to go from The Reunion Dinner forwards when it comes to this update. And we had a lot of short stories because it turns out reading a lot of short stories will help you with your reading goal because they don't take that long for you to read them usually, and also they do count as a whole book on Goodreads, so we had a lot of short stories. But let's start by talking about all the books I have read ever since the last update. So the first one, which I believe I haven't updated you on yet, is Someone's Uncle by Alison Isbeck. This is a short story by the same author of The Wedding People, and this is a short story that I got, I believe, last year, right after I read The Wedding People, because I really enjoyed that book, so I decided to pick up this short story, and this short story follows this young woman who is feeling kind of lost in life, and she goes on this trip with her friend, and they stay with her friend's uncle. She's on this trip with her husband, her friend, and her friend's husband, and they are staying in her friend's uncle's house in Germany. And this is a very short story and quite a weird one. Definitely not worth the price if are not willing to read a short story that you might either like or might either hate. Maybe stay away from this one, because this one was quite weird in terms of plot, and I ended up giving it 3 stars because I like the author's writing style, but this will be a hit or miss for most people. Then I finished my reread of The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata, and my opinions continues. I don't think this book is perfect by any means, but it does something to my brain. Mariana Zapata books, my brain just really enjoys them, and The Wall of Winnipeg and Me is one that my brain particularly really enjoys them. After The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, I decided to read a very short story because I needed to finish a book. I wanted to finish another book, so I ended up picking The Night Before Christmas by Clement C. Moore. And if you're wondering, Carol, why aren't you filming this in June? Well, technically it's now July, and you might be wondering, Carol, why are you reading a Christmas story in July? And for that I will say, why not? This is a very short story, which is also a poetry, and I'm usually not a fan of poetry. I usually don't read poetry, and it was fine. It was literally just a very short, okay, Christmas short story, and I have no strong opinions about it. I feel like this is definitely a short story more for kids, and I'm no longer a kid, but I would tell this short story, I would read this poem to a child. After that, I finished reading Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. This is not short. Buckeye is quite a long book that follows these 2 couples and the aftermath of an affair during World War II in Ohio, in small town suburbs, the suburbs of Ohio. I talk about it in another vlog, but overall I really liked Buckeye. It's just not a book for me. For me, I felt like it was a little bit too slow-paced and a little bit too sad, and I'm not in the mood, unless it's a slow burn romance, I'm not really in the mood to read very slow-paced books, and I'm also not in the mood to read sad books, which is what Buckeye is. But overall, I really enjoyed Buckeye. I ended up giving it, I believe, 3.75 stars. And then I read Hot for Slayer by Ali Hazelwood. I finally read Hot for Slayer by Ali Hazelwood, and this is a short novella where we follow Ito. She's she's over 1,000-year-old vampire, and then there is this one slayer, a vampire hunter called Laszlo, and he has been hunting her for over 1,000 years, and he apparently has this obsession that he's the one that needs to kill her because he was tasked with wiping her lineage out of this planet, and he's so obsessed with killing her that one day when he sees her in danger, he sees another vampire trying to kill her. He ends up saving her, but then he hits his head, and then he loses his memory. And then Ito ends up taking care of Laszlo, and there is a romance between the vampire and the vampire slayer. And this book is amazing! I wish we had a full-length novel about these characters, because it's amazing, it's so fun. I know it's a novella, but it's so fun. If you like Ali Hazelwood, please read this book. If you like vampire stories and you haven't read this book yet, this novella yet, please read this novella. 100% worth the hype, amazing. One of my favorite romances of the year. I just really liked these characters and story, and I already want to reread Hot for Slayer because it was just so fun, and ended up giving it 4 stars. If it was a full-length novel, I have a feeling this would have been a 5-star. And then I read another novella. This one's called Only Alive on Sundays by Kim Rashidi. This is a novella I found out through Pinterest. I saw this post on Pinterest saying, wow, the book's amazing, changed my life, and I was like, you know what, let's give it a try. The cover is cute, let's read it. I won't say this book is bad. It's just definitely not the book for me. This book is written, the chapter titles are tarot cards, and I'm not a tarot girl. I don't read tarot, I don't understand tarot, I don't really care for tarot. This is also a very spiritual book. I'm not necessarily a very spiritual person. I'm just not the target audience for this book. And also, I felt so bored. This book is, I think, 100 something pages, 200 max, and it felt like it was like 400 pages for me. It took me so long to read this book and to finish reading this book because I was just bored the whole time. I finished reading Only Life on Sundays out of spite because I bought this book and I started reading this book, and when I decided to DNF I was already 40% to reading this book, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to finish reading it, but I'm going to read a lot of books in the meantime. So it took me a long time to finish reading Only Life on Sundays, but I did finish reading Only Life on Sundays. If you are a very spiritual person, maybe you can give it a try. It's kind of like a self-discovery, not necessarily a coming of age, but more of like a self-discovery novella where we follow this young woman who she wants this magical store, because this book is magical realism, but she wants this magical store, and the universe sometimes sends her letters telling her things like, I don't know, it tells her things, and then there are these two guys who look a lot alike, and then she has a romance with one, but then she likes the other one, but also they become friends. It's a whole thing. It's a self-discovery novella, and I personally didn't like it because I'm definitely not the target audience for this book. It's not the book for me. Then I finished reading People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is a friends to lovers rom-com. Really liked it. It was fun. I had a lot of fun. Not my favorite Emily Henry ever, but I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. By the way, I ended up giving Only Life on Sundays 2 stars, and then I read People Meet on Vacation, and I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. And then last night I finished reading The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This is a classic short story about this woman who goes crazy. She might go crazy, or maybe the yellow wallpaper at the abandoned home she and her husband and her family are spending the summer at might be haunted. Who knows? It's kind of a story of neglect about women's mental health, and I read Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman before, and I really enjoyed that short story, and I also really enjoyed The Yellow Wallpaper. But overall, I really understand the hype, and I do recommend reading it. I think it's a wonderful story. But for me personally, it just felt a little bit boring. Not necessarily, it wasn't something I was like, wow, amazing, I love the story, but I really enjoyed it. Especially, I enjoyed it for what it is, but not necessarily the short story for me. But in case you haven't read it yet, I do recommend reading it. I believe it might be on public domain now, so it might be really easy to read it if you have Kindle Unlimited. I know it's on Kindle Unlimited because I read this short story through Kindle Unlimited, so highly recommend Yellow Wallpaper. Then I read a short story called Crime of Fashion by Emma Rosenblum. This is, I think, the 3rd short story in one of those Amazon collections. I think this one's called the Busy Bodies collection, which is it's a collection of mystery short stories by different mystery authors. And in Crime of Fashion, we follow Nellie. She's a closet assistant. She's an assistant for this fashion magazine. And while they are on a shoot, this very expensive necklace goes missing, and her job is on the line because some people are trying to frame her. So she ends up going on a journey trying to figure out who actually tried to steal the necklace. And it was really fun. Again, if it was a longer book and you added a bit more layers to the story, it could be better, but overall, also it was quite predictable. I predicted who would have stolen the necklace in the first 10 pages. But overall, it was a fun book, a fun short story. It's not one I highly recommend, but it's also not one I would tell you don't read it. If you like this sort of more cozy mysteries, you might enjoy this one. I ended up giving it 3 stars, by the way. And then the last book I finished reading this morning. I finished reading at 6 a.m. I finished reading The Situationship by Abby Jimenez. This is a very short story, I think it's all around 30 pages, where we follow Doug. And if you read Part of a Road, you have met Doug. He's a great character, and in this short story, we found out how Doug met Maddie, who is this person he apparently has a situationship. Maddie apparently is a character from Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I still haven't read this book yet, but now I want to read it, because if this story is kind of interconnected with Just for the Summer, I want to read Just for the Summer, because even though I don't think Abby Jimenez is the author for me, when her books are done right, it can work for me. And I really enjoyed the Situationship. In my opinion, the Situationship is the best it's the best book I read from Abby Jimenez, because I really, really enjoyed this book. I want it to be a full novel. Abby Jimenez, if you write a full novel about Doug and Maddie, I will read it, because it was just so cute and wonderful, and I really like Doug with his pet pig, Kevin Bacon, and the baby goat, and the chickens. It just was so cute. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. The only reason I didn't give it at least a 4 stars, because I wanted it to be longer. I needed this book to be longer, just because Doug is such a wonderful character, and Maddie is also such an interesting character, and the story was just so wonderful that I needed it to be longer. Please, Abby, please give us a full novel about Doug and Maddie. And right now, according to Goodreads, we have one book or one book behind schedule. So if I pick also a short story or a short book, we can catch up with my reading goal today. So let's pick a book, let's pick a short book. Let's finish with this reading goal today, and finally, because I have been filming this video for 2 months almost. This is essentially a reading wrap up for May and June and the first 7 days of July. Let's stop rambling, because we need to pick another book and we need to finish. It's the next day, and I'm here to give you a final update for this video, because I did finish reading a book. It was actually a short story, so we can finally catch up with my reading goal. I can finally catch up with my reading goal after 2 months of trying. We are finally up to date. So first I tried reading I'm Gonna Get You Back by Elena Armas. It's a short novella where it is a friends to lovers, brother's best friend, romance kind of situation. We have these two characters. She's an author, he's a baker, and she goes to this book convention, but then there is a blizzard and they get snowed into the cabin. And also this is a romantic suspense, because our female main character, she has a stalker, and also the male main character, who used to be her childhood best friend, is there, and he will try to help her with the stalker situation. And I say I tried reading it because I DNF'd 38% through reading I'm Gonna Get You Back. I believe this novella was initially published as an audiobook. I think it was originally a Spotify exclusive audiobook, but recently it was released in a traditional book format. I'm not sure if it is available for the physical copy. The ebook is definitely available, because I started reading the ebook, and as I said, I didn't have this book. I got through 38% of reading this novella, and I just couldn't do it. The male main character, he gave me the ick, massive ick. He used to be engaged to her best friend, and 3 months before the start of the story, he breaks up with her best friend, with his fiancée, who he already had. The wedding was already scheduled. He called off the wedding because he clearly likes the main character. And then we have Frankie, who is the author, and she has a stalker, and she doesn't feel like she's appropriately concerned with the fact that she has a stalker that set her neighbor's shed on fire because she complained about it once. She's not scared enough, she's not concerned enough, and she's not a girl's girl. I just found both of the characters to be just so annoying. It was so annoying to be in their heads. And like the male main character also, he has a mullet and a mustache, and for me that adds to the ick, because he has a mullet and a mustache, and I ended up DNFing it at 38% through this novella. I think it was right before Actually, it's exactly when they find out that there is a blizzard and they were snowing inside this inn, inside this hotel, and I just couldn't do it. I found the characters to be insufferable and very much not likable, which is a problem when you are talking about just a regular romance, and I just couldn't do it. But then I really just wanted to catch up for my reading goal, so I ended up going back to a short story. So I went back to the Busybodies series of short stories by different authors that Amazon did, and I ended up picking The Nosy Neighbor by Nita Prose. This is another mystery short story where we follow this elderly woman. I think she's around 75-year-old, and she has lived in the suburbs for many years. She no longer has a family. Her closest relative is a niece that lives in Denmark, but she lives in the United States. Our elder lives in the United States, and she essentially has no family left. And she spends most of her days being nosy and kind of spying on her front door neighbor, who she calls a narcissist. She's this very loud woman. She has this husband who is quite frail, and our main character, she has a feeling there's something sinister going on in her from her neighbor's house, and we are investigating that. And I ended up giving it 2 stars because the premise was okay and it was promising, but the way the story went, no thank you. I didn't like it. I'm not mad that I read it, but I didn't like it, so I ended up giving The Nosy Neighbors 2 stars. But you know what's the best part about it? I finally catch up to my reading goal. We are up to date with the reading goal. So after 2 months, we finally achieved our goal. And yes, if you like this video, please consider leaving likes, subscribe to the channel. If there is any book you think I should read next, please let me know in the comment section, and I hope to see you with another video very soon. Bye!